Welcome to World Revolution Channel. Today we present 7 lessons from Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Have you ever felt like you had a hidden power in your life waiting to be awakened? In Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within, you'll discover how to unleash the giant within you, transform your life to its fullest potential, and achieve true happiness. If you're ready to push your limits and create a bigger future, don't miss 7 lessons from Awaken the Giant Within. Let's go.
And with that opening, we are jumping straight into another deep dive. Our mission today is, I think, to really get under the hood of the source material, Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. We want to extract the practical mechanics of personal transformation.
Right, because it's easy to hear that kind of motivational language and just let it wash over you. But what we're looking for are the actual foundational concepts, the things that really shape, or as the book says, sometimes misshape our behavior.
Precisely. The source material starts from this really powerful place, this idea that for so many people, what he calls the dream has sort of faded, it's gotten dissipated.
It's not that the power is gone, but that inner certainty, that edge is missing. So our job is to distill what the author sees as the critical keys to, well, shaping our own destiny.
Yeah, by mastering those fundamental drivers of our own behavior. It's all about restoring that dream, helping you remember, and more importantly, use the unlimited power that lies sleeping within us all.
That sounds ambitious.
It is. And he's very clear that we're not just talking about singular fixes here. This isn't about, overcoming a phobia of spiders or stopping procrastination for one afternoon.
Okay, so what is it about?
The goal he lays out is creating global changes. These are like fundamental pivot points that are designed to take your entire life, your health, your finances, your relationships to a completely new level.
And the author's own story is sort of the proof of concept for that, isn't it? It's this incredible janitor-to-jet helicopter story.
It's a remarkable anecdote. I mean, he talks about flying his jet helicopter over Glendale in Los Angeles and having this profound moment of realization.
What happened?
He was hovering directly above the exact same building where only 12 years earlier he's been working as a janitor.
12 years. In the span of a life, that's nothing. To go from janitor to flying your own helicopter over the same spot?
It's an incredible contrast, right? He went from, worrying if his old 1960 Volkswagen would even make the trip to work, feeling, in his words, fearful and totally alone,
to literally living the dream he's talking about. It really forces you to ask the question, what changed? What was the actual difference maker?
And according to the book, the difference was applying these very principles we're going to dive into. It's about understanding how to generate that internal leverage and, crucially, how to make what he calls congruent decisions.
And it's not just his story. He provides other examples that show how these methods can be applied, universally.
Absolutely. The results he cites are pretty surprising. They really do demonstrate this potential for massive, rapid change.
Like the one about the person whose income jumped from $2,000 to over $12,000 in 6 months.
A 600% increase, and that was driven by internal psychological shifts, by learning these emotional management principles. It wasn't about a new job or a lottery win.
And it scales up, too. There's the story of the entrepreneur who increased corporate revenues by over $3 million in just 18 months.
Right, so the context changes, personal finance versus a corporation, but the underlying mechanisms of mastering your own behavior, they stay exactly the same.
And I think this is so important. It goes way beyond just money. There's a story of the young woman who lost 52 pounds.
Yeah, she showed him a picture of her former self, and the change was just profound. And she did it simply by applying these principles of leverage and what he calls neuroassociation, which we'll get into.
So it really drives home the idea that whether your goal is financial or physical or even just peace of mind, the operating system, the human brain, is the common denominator here.
It all comes back to this core idea that we all have the same opportunity to experience life to the fullest. The variable isn't what's outside of us, it's our internal mastery.
Okay, so if that power is sleeping inside all of us, why are so many people stuck? Where's the disconnect?
Well, the answer, as the author presents it, starts with the most fundamental thing we can do. It starts with the power to decide.
All right, so let's start there. Segment 1, the power of a single decision.
This is really the foundation of the whole philosophy. If you ask most people what shapes their life, what shapes their destiny, they'll usually point to things outside of themselves.
Like fate or their circumstances, the family they were born into, their genetics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the driving belief in this material is that it's our decisions not the conditions of our lives that truly determine our destiny.
Okay, that's a radical statement, because we hear about the conditions of life all the time. Systemic issues, unfair advantages. You can't just dismiss all of that, can you?
The philosophy doesn't dismiss the conditions exist. It just dismisses their power to determine the final outcome. The book is full of examples of people who, despite facing just overwhelming disadvantages, they exploded beyond the limitations of their conditions. And they did it by making new, non-negotiable decisions about who they were and what they were going to do.
So it's like someone born with every advantage who never really commits to anything. They can easily be outpaced by someone who started with nothing but made a powerful decision to become something more.
That's it exactly. The power is in the commitment, not the starting line. And this leads to a really subtle but huge danger, which is the danger of not deciding.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you're passive, if you don't make conscious, deliberate decisions about how you want to live, you've actually still made a decision.
You've decided to let your environment decide for you.
Or your past, or what everyone else is doing. And this is what the author calls the Niagara Syndrome.
The Niagara Syndrome. I love that visual. It's so powerful. You can just picture it, right? You're on this little raft, and you're just being swept along by this massive river.
And you might be really busy. You're paddling like crazy, trying to avoid the next rock you see, dodging a log here and there.
You feel like you're in control because you're navigating the immediate problems.
But you're so focused on the short term that you're completely ignoring the fact that the current is taking you inevitably towards a giant waterfall just around the bend.
It's the ultimate passive death spiral.
Yeah.
You're expending all this energy, but you never chose your destination. You're just reacting.
Exactly. So if that's the default for so many people, the question becomes, how do we make a true decision? Because we use that word so loosely now. I decided to have toast for breakfast.
Yeah, it doesn't have much weight. What makes a decision actually shape your destiny?
The book goes right to the etymology, the Latin root of the word. Decision comes from de, which means from, and collatire, which means to cut.
To cut from.
Right. So a true decision isn't a preference. It's a commitment to a result where you metaphorically cut off any and all other possibilities.
That completely reframes it. It's not just choosing one path. It's actively destroying all the other paths. There's no going back.
That's the energy of it. It's the difference between saying, yeah, I'd like to quit smoking, which leaves the door open, versus a true decision. I am a non-smoker. I will never touch a cigarette again. That part of my life is over.
And that kind of committed decision, it instantly changes everything. Your relationships, your health, your income. It unleashes different resources inside of you because the goal is no longer negotiable.
And the ultimate example of this, the source, points to Mahatma Gandhi.
I mean, think about that. A quiet, unassuming lawyer, a pacifist, up against the full might of the British Empire. It's an absurd mismatch on paper.
Totally. But he made an indomitable, non-negotiable decision to rid India of British rule. That wasn't a wish, wasn't a preference. It was a total congruent conviction.
And that decision, that internal commitment, that's what accessed his inner resources to face challenges that would have crushed anyone else. He didn't have the army. He had the decision.
The power and the resources followed the decision. That's the key. You don't wait for the conditions to be perfect. You make the committed decision, and then you find a way. The resources, the strategy, they have to appear to support that commitment.
So that's the engine. And that commitment is guided by 3 specific decisions we're making every single day, whether we know it or not.
Right. They form what the author calls our master system of evaluation. They're constantly running in the background.
Okay, let's break those 3 down.
The first is, what are you going to focus on? The second is, what do things mean to you? And the third is, what are you going to do about them?
Focus, meaning, and action.
That's it. And the book's argument is that if you see anyone who is more successful than you in any area of life, it's simply because they are making these 3 decisions differently.
The example of Ed Roberts, who was physically challenged, really illustrates this. Most people in his position might focus on their limitations.
Right, they'd focus on what they can't do. The meaning they'd assign to their condition would be pain or obstacle or tragedy, and the action would be, to retreat or give up.
But he did the opposite.
He consciously chose to focus on how he could make a difference for others. He decided his difficulties meant challenge, a motivator, not a disability. And so his action was to commit his entire life to improving the quality of life for all physically challenged people. He took conscious control of that master system.
And the warning here is that most of us just let this system run on autopilot. We let the news or social media or our own past dictate what we focus on, what it means, and what we do about it.
We fall right back into that Niagara syndrome.
Yeah.
We're living by default, not by design. And the problem is, if you've been living by default for years, you end up with what he calls flabby decision-making muscles.
Oh, that's a great phrase. We've all seen it. People who are so out of practice, they're paralyzed by choice. They can't even decide what to order at a restaurant, let alone make a major life decision.
So how do you start strengthening those muscles? It's like a workout plan. The first rule is simple. Make decisions often.
Just start small.
Exactly. The muscle gets stronger with use. Pick a small decision you've been putting off and just make it. It builds momentum and confidence.
The second rule is crucial. Learn from them. Don't be afraid of making the wrong decision.
Right. The book asserts there are no failures, only results, only outcomes. If you get a result you don't want, you don't beat yourself up. You analyze it, you extract the lesson, and you use that information to make a better decision next time.
And the third rule is about persistence. Be flexible in your strategy.
Yes, you stay absolutely committed to the outcome, the destination. That is non-negotiable. But the approach, the map you use to get there, has to be flexible. If one way doesn't work, you don't quit the journey. You just find another road.
And finally, enjoy the process. Get excited about the fact that the very next decision you make, the next person you talk to, the next book you read, could change your life forever.
That combination of a fixed decision and a flexible approach, it's perfectly shown in the story of Soichiro Honda.
The founder of the car company. His story is just, it's a masterclass in overcoming adversity.
It's more than adversity. It was just one disaster after another. His first piston factory gets bombed during the war. He rebuilds, and his second factory is destroyed by an earthquake. He was constantly getting zero results for his efforts.
Most people would have given up a dozen times over.
But he had made the decision to persevere. And he was flexible. After the war, there was a massive gasoline shortage, so he adapted. His new decision was simple. Find a better way to get around. He took a small motor and attached it to his bicycle.
That was the seed of the idea, but then he hit the next wall. Capital.
Yeah.
He needed money for a real manufacturing plant, and in a post-war economy, that's almost impossible.
But again, he didn't abandon the goal. He just changed his strategy. And his solution was incredible. He decided to appeal directly to the 18,000 bicycle shop owners all across Japan by writing each and every one of them a personal letter, asking them to invest in his vision.
18,000 personal letters. That is a level of commitment that is just mind-boggling.
And it worked. He got the capital he needed, and that was the birth of the Honda Corporation. It only happened because of that initial, unshakable decision combined with that incredible strategic flexibility.
And it really highlights this warning in the book about how a short-term focus so often leads to failure, not just for individuals, but even on a national scale.
Right. Things like budget deficits or financial crises. They often stem from leaders focusing on the next rock in the river instead of the waterfall up ahead. That's the Niagara syndrome on a societal level.
And it's so easy to do in our own lives. The source uses the story of Billy Joel, the musician.
Yeah, he was at a point where he was struggling with self-doubt, worried his music wasn't good enough, worried about his personal life. He was ready to just give up.
That's hard to imagine given his success.
But he was stuck in that short-term focus. What turned it around was renewing his long-term commitment. He made a new, congruent decision to persist, to focus on the bigger picture. And what seemed totally impossible in that short-term moment of doubt, well, it turned into the incredible success and happiness that millions of people know him for.
It's such a powerful lesson. You can literally change your life the instant you make a new, committed, congruent decision.
Yeah.
But that leads to the next big question. Okay, decisions are the steering wheel, but what's the fuel? What is the engine that actually drives us to make one decision over another in the first place?
That fuel, the absolute primary driver for every single thing we do, consciously or unconsciously, is the twin force of pain and pleasure. It's our fundamental biological need to move away from pain and move toward pleasure.
This is the universal engine. It's running in all of us.
All of us.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. The specific things we link pain and pleasure to, that's been rigged for us our whole lives by our parents, our friends, TV, advertising.
So the most important thing we ever learn is what specifically creates pain and what creates pleasure for us. That's our personal map.
Exactly. And depending on that map, you get radically different destinies. The book uses two really strong contrasting examples.
On one end of the spectrum, you have someone like Donald Trump.
Right. He links massive, undeniable pleasure to what? acquiring the biggest buildings, having the most extravagant yachts, making the shrewdest deals. It's about accumulation and public victory.
And on the other end, you have Mother Teresa.
Her internal map was completely different. She linked massive pleasure, this ultimate sense of meaning and fulfillment, to helping people, to easing suffering, healing illness, saving lives.
So two totally different life paths, but both were shaped by the exact same mechanism. They just linked pain and pleasure to completely different things.
That's the critical insight. The driver is the same. It's the associations that create the destiny. But here's where most of us get tripped up and sabotage ourselves. We fall into the short-term trap.
The trap of basing our decisions on what feels good right now versus what will feel good in the long run. The weight loss example is perfect for this.
It is. A person wants the long-term pleasure of being fit, healthy, and confident. But in the moment of decision, when that dessert is on the table or it's time to go to the gym, the brain does a quick calculation.
And the immediate short-term pain of saying no to the cake or the pain of getting up and exercising that feels more real and more pressing than the abstract future pleasure of being slim.
Exactly. The brain prioritizes avoiding the immediate pain, which guarantees the long-term pain of staying overweight continues. To create lasting change, you have to flip that association on its head.
You have to make the old destructive behavior intensely painful right now, and the new behavior intensely pleasurable.
People who are consistently fit don't just use willpower. They've conditioned themselves to the point where they genuinely believe that nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. They link pleasure to movement and nourishing food, and they link real visceral pain to the feeling of being lethargic or bloated.
So how does that conditioning happen? How do we create those deep gut-level linkages? This gets us into what the book calls neuroassociative conditioning, or NAC.
Right. NAC is the framework for understanding how we create these automatic behaviors. The idea is that our behaviors aren't really rooted in logic. They're rooted in our nervous system, has these things called neuroassociations, literal connections between neurons.
So every time we feel a strong emotion, pain, or pleasure, our brain immediately looks for the cause and creates a link.
It's a survival mechanism. And it's the same principle as Pavlov's famous experiment with the dogs. He rang a bell every time he fed them, and eventually the dogs are conditioned to salivate at just the sound of the bell. He created a neuroassociation.
And that same principle is used on us all the time, especially in advertising.
Constantly. Advertisers are masters of NAC. They take a product, a soda, a car, whatever, and they pair it over and over again with a peak emotional state, with excitement, sex appeal, joy.
The story about Pepsi and Michael Jackson is a perfect example of this.
It is. Pepsi paid him $15 million, and he wouldn't even hold a can of the product on camera.
So what were they paying for?
They were paying for the association. They leveraged his ability to put millions of fans into a peak emotional state, absolute euphoria, and right at that peak moment, they'd flash the Pepsi logo. After enough repetition, your brain forges a link. Pepsi equals excitement, and sales went through the roof. It's pure emotional conditioning.
Okay, so the key is to take conscious control of that conditioning process for ourselves. The author's personal story about his mom and the beer is, well, it's pretty intense.
It's very intense, but it's a perfect example. His mom knew that just telling him beer was bad wouldn't work because he had a pleasure link to it. He saw his dad drink it. It made him feel grown up.
So she had to break that pleasure link and replace it with an incredibly painful one.
And she did it at a visceral gut level. She forced him to drink beer until he was violently, disgustingly ill. And then to amplify the pain, she made him clean it all up.
And the result was?
Instantaneous and permanent. He immediately linked the smell of beer to the horrible feelings of nausea and humiliation. The neuroassociation was so powerful, so rooted in intense pain, he never touched beer again.
That is an extreme example. So how do we as adults create that kind of emotional leverage for ourselves without, resorting to that kind of trauma?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the answer is that you have to understand that change happens when, at your deepest emotional level, that you must change. Not that you should change.
The difference between should and must, that's the leverage.
That's the leverage. You have to reach a pain threshold. You have to get to a point where your brain screams, I have had it. I cannot spend one more day, one more minute living like this.
So you do it internally. You consciously focus on all the long-term pain your current behavior is causing you. The missed opportunities, the damage to your identity, the regret. You stack it all up until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing.
Exactly. And the most powerful force for this is your own identity. When you link a behavior not just to a bad outcome, but to being a type of person you can't stand to be,
Yeah.
that's when change becomes a must.
So it's not smoking is bad for my health. It's smoking means I am weak, I am a fraud, I am destroying myself. The pain becomes immediate.
That's it. It brings to mind that old saying, he who has a strong enough why can bear almost anyhow. The book suggests that 80% of any change is getting that leverage, that massive why. The how is only 20%.
But what about when we get stuck? The book calls it the insidious culprit of self-sabotage. These mixed neuroassociations.
Oh yes, mixed associations. This is when we link both significant pain and significant pleasure to the exact same thing. It creates total paralysis.
The example of money is so relatable. On the one hand, people want money because they link it to freedom, security, contribution, all massive pleasure.
But on the other hand, many of us have been conditioned to link too much money to really negative things.
Like greed, being judged, stress, maybe even being immoral or losing your friends.
So your brain gets these completely mixed signals. It's trying to run toward the pleasure of wealth and away from the pain of being a greedy person at the same time. And the result is you get stuck. You make mixed financial results. You sabotage yourself to stay safe.
So to make a real lasting change, you have to clean up those signals. You have to consciously link overwhelming pain to the old behavior and pure, irresistible pleasure to the new one. And then you have to condition it until it's automatic.
Yes, and that conditioning, that reinforcement, it leads us right into the third major lever for change. The actual language we use every single day.
Which brings us to our third segment, reshaping your reality with language.
Language is, I think, the most underrated tool we have. The concept in the book is called transformational vocabulary, or TAVI. And the core idea is that the words we habitually choose to describe our life, they don't just describe our reality, they create it.
So it's not just that you feel an emotion and then find a word for it. The word you choose can actually generate the emotion itself.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The book gives a great example. 3 people are in the same frustrating traffic jam. One person says to themselves, I feel rage. The second says, I'm furious, I'm enraged. And the third thinks, I'm a bit annoyed.
And their physical and emotional experience of that exact same event will be wildly different.
Completely. The word rage triggers a totally different neurochemical response in your body than the phrase, a bit annoyed. You are literally creating your own suffering or your own calm with your vocabulary.
Which means we have the power to change our emotional state in an instant just by consciously choosing a different word.
That's the practical application of it. To lower the intensity of a negative emotion, you consciously choose a softer, almost ridiculous word. If you feel angry, try labeling it as peeved or a bit miffed.
The word itself is a pattern interrupt. It sounds so silly that it breaks the emotional intensity.
It does. And you have to do the same thing on the positive side. You have to amplify your good feelings.
Right.
Don't let a great day just be fine or okay.
No, the source says to use words like phenomenal, ecstatic, cosmically charged, unbelievably blessed.
You're deliberately conditioning your nervous system. By using more intense positive language, you make the experience more pleasurable, more memorable, and you reinforce the pattern you want to keep.
And this has huge practical applications in, say, business communication. If you're in a tense meeting and you say, I'm really upset and worried about these numbers.
You've immediately put the other person on the defensive. You've created a conflict state. But if you consciously soften it and say, I'm a little bit concerned about these numbers.
It completely changes the dynamic. It invites collaboration instead of conflict. You can actually find a solution together. Your vocabulary shapes the entire interaction.
And beyond just individual words, we also have what the book calls global metaphors. These are the symbols and stories we use that create emotional intensity even faster.
Things like, I feel like I'm in the dark, or I'm struggling to keep my head above water. We use them all the time without thinking.
And they're incredibly powerful because your brain doesn't really know the difference between a vivid metaphor and reality. If you say, I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders, your muscles will literally tense up. Your posture will change. You will feel a physical burden.
So the way to break that is to just break the metaphor.
Exactly. If someone says that to you, the instant fix is to say, okay, just set the world down for a minute. That command interrupts the pattern, it shatters the image, and it provides an immediate, if temporary, state change.
But this goes deeper than just a quick fix. The global metaphor we choose for our entire life can shape our whole identity.
Absolutely. If your unconscious metaphor for life is a constant battle or a war, then you automatically adopt a whole set of rules. You're always on guard. You can't trust people. You have to fight for everything. But what if you changed it?
What if life is a dance? Or a game.
The rules completely change. The emotions change. The behaviors change. It's a global pivot point that affects every area of your life at once just by changing that one root metaphor.
We even see this used on a cultural level with environmentalism.
Right. The early metaphor was spaceship Earth.
Yeah.
Which is intellectually accurate, but it's cold, it's disassociated, it doesn't inspire much emotion.
But then the language shifted to Mother Earth.
And that's a game changer. It instantly creates a powerful, protective, emotional connection. We are wired to protect our mother. The metaphor carries an emotional weight that spaceship just can't.
The final point on this is so crucial, making sure our metaphors are in the right context.
Yes. You can't carry a metaphor that works in one area of your life into another where it's destructive. The example of the air traffic controller is perfect.
At work, that metaphor of control, precision, and authority is essential. It saves lives.
But if you take that air traffic controller metaphor home and try to apply it to your family, to your kids, it becomes a disaster. You can't control your family like they're airplanes. It's a totally incompatible context.
It's all so interconnected, isn't it? The decisions we make, the pain and pleasure we associate with them, and the very language we use to describe it all, it's all feeding into that same master system.
And that synthesis is really the big takeaway from this deep dive. We've looked at the fundamental architecture of how we operate.
We started with the idea that our destiny is forged not by our circumstances, but by our decisions. Those true, congruent decisions where we cut off all other possibilities.
Then we looked at the engine that drives those decisions, the twin forces of pain and pleasure. And we saw that to make lasting change, we have to become masters of our own neuroassociative conditioning. We have to consciously link massive pain to what we want to stop and massive pleasure to what we want to start.
And finally, we saw how the language we use, our transformational vocabulary, and our global metaphors isn't just describing our reality, it's actively creating it moment by moment.
And all three of those levers, decisions, pain and pleasure, and language, are constantly influencing those three core questions. What am I focusing on? What does it mean? And what am I going to do? That is the master system.
So the ultimate goal here is to stop being a victim of the Niagara syndrome, to stop just floating down the river, and to start consciously steering the boat by taking control of this system.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final provocative thought for you to consider. The biggest thing that holds most people back is the belief that real, deep, lasting change has to be slow and difficult. They think that because they've tried using willpower and failed, it must be impossible to change quickly.
But the core message of this material seems to be the opposite.
It is. The logic is simple. If you can create a problem in an instant, a phobia, a limiting belief, a bad habit, all from one intense experience, then you can also create a solution in an instant. You can create a new empowering belief or make a new decision in a single committed moment, provided you find the right leverage and break the old pattern. Life is constantly testing your commitment. And the mastery, the fulfillment, the life you dream of, it's all waiting on the other side of that one congruent decision.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next topic. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to continue our journey through, well, what many consider a foundational text on human potential.
That's right. We are coming back to continue the lessons from Awaken the Giant Within, a massive roadmap, really, to personal mastery.
And last time we laid some groundwork, but today, our mission is to pull out two of the most powerful and I mean immediately applicable techniques from the book.
Yeah, these aren't long-term 10-year plan type strategies. These are things you can literally use in the next 5 minutes to, gain focus, gain clarity, and just get better results.
So we're talking about mastering your internal state and also controlling the questions you ask yourself. These aren't just like fluffy ideas. The book presents them as neurological shortcuts.
They're levers. That's the best way to think about them. And it all starts with this one central principle that you really have to get.
What's that?
It's that your behavior, it isn't really a result of your ability, not your background, not your resources, none of that. It's a result of the state that you're in right now, in this moment.
Okay, so if you want to change what you're doing or the results you're getting,
you have to change your state first. It's the prerequisite. Everything else follows from that.
And that leads us right into the first major topic, this idea of changing your state in an instant.
It does. It brings us to what the source material calls NAC Master Step 3. NAC, for anyone who needs a refresher, stands for neuroassociative conditioning.
Right, the process of rewiring old patterns.
Exactly. And the most effective way to start that rewiring process is by interrupting the old pattern. And you do that by mastering your state.
So define state for us. What are we really talking about here?
State is just the sum of your emotional and psychological condition at any given moment. It's the filter through which you see the world. It determines what you think you're capable of, how you see a problem.
Yeah.
Everything.
And the book says there are two main ways to control it instantly.
Two primary levers, yeah. Your physiology and your focus.
Let's start with physiology. That seems
Yeah.
more tangible somehow.
It is. It's the fastest lever you can pull because every single emotion you can think of, from, deep depression to total exuberant confidence, has a specific physical template linked to it.
A template?
A specific posture, a way of breathing, facial expressions, patterns of movement. I mean, think about it. You can't be genuinely, wildly happy while you're all slumped over taking these tiny, shallow breaths, can you?
No, it feels wrong. The body and the feeling don't match.
They don't match because they can't. The body and mind are one system, one cybernetic loop. What you do with your body sends a direct signal to your brain at how it should feel.
That makes a lot of sense, intuitively. When we sue someone who looks defeated, we use physical words. We say they look low or they're carrying a heavy weight, their head is down.
Yeah,
but here's the question I always have with this. If I'm genuinely feeling down or, totally overwhelmed, forcing myself to stand up straight and put on a big smile, it feels fake. It feels like I'm just ignoring a real problem.
And that's a critical question.
Yeah.
It really gets to the heart of the difference between, say, knowing something intellectually and actually conditioning it into your nervous system.
So that feeling of resistance is normal.
It's totally normal.
Yeah.
It's the old neurological pattern fighting back, saying, hey, wait a minute, we're supposed to be slumped over right now.
Yeah.
But the principle holds. Motion creates emotion. If you adopt a limited, constricted physiology, you're literally guaranteeing a limited emotional range. You're locking yourself in a box.
That's a powerful way to put it.
And this leads to a pretty shocking statistic in the book. The average person, out of the thousands of possible emotions we can experience, cycles through less than a dozen in a typical week.
Less than a dozen, really?
Yeah. It's a short loop. Stressed, frustrated, bored, anxious, maybe, a little bit of happy or relieved thrown in. They're living in this psychological rut, running the same emotional program over and over again.
So this isn't just about trying to be happier. This is about expanding our entire emotional vocabulary, like building a bigger toolkit.
That's it, exactly. It's about cultivating a more sophisticated psychological palette. So instead of defaulting to stress when a challenge hits, you can consciously choose a more resourceful state.
Like what? What are some of these other states?
Well, the book encourages us to cultivate things like enthusiasm, fascination, curiosity, even outrageousness, or just sheer unadulterated confidence. These are the states that lead to breakthroughs.
Not the mild irritation we usually live in.
Right. A true master of their life isn't someone who is just happy all the time. That's not realistic. It's someone who can instantly change their state when a situation demands more from them.
Okay, so since physiology is the fastest way in, we have to use our bodies to break the pattern. This is where that laughter challenge comes in, isn't it?
Absolutely. The laughter challenge is a fantastic tool for this kind of neurological rerouting.
So what is it exactly?
The action step is simple, but
Well, it's challenging.
you make yourself laugh for no reason at all, 3 times a day for 7 days.
For no reason. I can just imagine how ridiculous that would feel.
Oh, you feel completely ridiculous. But that's part of the magic. That's part of the mechanism.
How does that work? Why is forcing a laugh so effective?
A few reasons. First, laughter is what we'd call a pattern interrupt of the highest order. It is physically incompatible with states like fear or stress or anger. You just can't do both at once.
Okay, that makes sense.
And second, this is the conditioning part. Even a forced laugh begins to use the same muscles, the same breathing patterns as a genuine laugh. And that physical action sends positive biofeedback to your brain. It starts releasing endorphins, dopamine, the same neurochemicals you get from genuine pleasure.
So you're creating a positive feedback loop. You're kind of tricking your system into accessing that resourceful state, even if there's no joke.
Yes. And the repetition, 3 times a day for 7 days, is what builds the new neural pathway.
Yeah.
You are physically carving out a new road in your nervous system. You're training your body to access joy more automatically.
And the book mentions doing it with a partner.
It does, because that can create hysterical results. When you both look so silly trying to force a laugh, it often turns into a genuine, uncontrollable laugh. The silliness itself becomes the reason. You're conditioning your nervous system to pivot towards joy instead of letting it default to worry.
So the big takeaway here is you don't wait for your life to get better before you feel better. You feel better first by changing your state, and that gives you the resources to make your life better.
That's the core of it.
So if physiology is the body's lever, what's the mind's lever?
That would be the second component, focus.
Okay, so let's explore that. If physiology is the action of the body, focus is all about the interpretation of the mind.
And the source is crystal clear on this. We are not driven by reality. We're driven by our perception of reality and what you choose to focus on.
Yeah.
That dictates the meaning you assign to anything that happens.
And that meaning creates your emotional state.
Instantly.
There's that great example in the book. Let's say you're waiting for a business partner for a critical meeting and they're 30 minutes late. Your reaction, your state, it completely depends on where you put your focus. If you focus on, they don't care, this is so disrespectful, they always do this, you create this angry, anxious, disempowered state.
You're stewing in it. But if you just pivot, if you shift your focus to a different interpretation, maybe they're having great difficulties getting to you, a family emergency, a traffic nightmare.
Your state changes immediately. You go from anger to concern, or at least patience.
In a split second. And nothing in reality has changed. The only thing that changed was your focus. For most people, that's an unconscious choice. The goal is to make it a conscious one.
This takes us into some of the more technical stuff in the book, the inner architecture of our experience. Focus is controlled by something called submodalities.
Right. Submodalities are just the building blocks of our mental representations. Think of them like the specific settings on your internal TV, the brightness, the color, the volume, the location of the picture.
So all the little details of the picture, sounds, and feelings in our head.
Exactly. And if you learn to consciously change these settings, you can instantly change the emotional intensity of any thought or memory.
So let's talk about the visual ones first. How can we use those as a control panel?
Okay, so think of a really pleasurable memory, something that makes you feel fantastic. The reason it feels good is because your brain has coded it with specific submodalities. It's probably bright, colorful, maybe it's close to you, or it's a big panoramic image.
Okay, I have one in mind.
Now, in your mind's eye, make that image even brighter. Turn up the color saturation. Pull it closer to you. What happens to the feeling?
It gets stronger, more intense.
Of course it does. You're turning up the dial on the brain's own wiring system. Now let's do the opposite. Think of a problem or a negative memory that's been bothering you.
All right.
Notice how you're representing it. Is it big? Is it close? Is it in vivid color?
Yeah, it feels right in my face.
Okay. Now consciously change the submodalities. Drain all the color out of it. Make it black and white. Now shrink it down, smaller and smaller, like a tiny little postage stamp. And then, with the sound effect in your mind, whoosh, push it far away, hundreds of yards away, until it's just a tiny, insignificant dot on the horizon.
Wow.
What happens to the emotional chart?
It's gone. Or at least it's much, much weaker. It feels distant.
That's the practical application of getting emotional distance. When a problem feels overwhelming, it's because your internal picture of it is huge and close. The solution is to literally get distance from it in your mind.
And the book talks about finding the driver's submodality, right? Like the one change that makes the biggest difference.
Yes. For some people, the key is color versus black and white. For others, it's distance. For some, it's the difference between seeing it through your own eyes, what we call associated, versus seeing yourself in the picture, which is dissociated. You have to play with it and find your personal control panel.
And this works for sounds, too.
Absolutely. Got a nagging, critical inner voice. Change the sound of it. Make it sound like a cartoon character. Speed it up until it's squeaky and ridiculous. Make it come from far away behind you. You are actively changing your state from the inside out.
This all connects back to the need for instant focus control, especially when the stakes are high. The race car analogy from the book is perfect for this.
It's one of the best metaphors for how focus works in life.
So when you're learning to drive a race car and you go into a high-speed skid, your natural, unconditioned instinct is to stare right at the wall you're about to hit.
The threat. Your brain is wired to focus on the danger. And of course, the call follows your focus. You steer where you look.
It's a perfect metaphor. If you're only focused on the debt, the problem, the fear, that's where you're going to end up.
Exactly. The learned behavior, the mastery, is to instantly, violently wrench your focus away from the wall and look at where you want to go, the open track.
But that's the hard part, isn't it? Knowing you should do it is one thing, but in that moment of pure panic, your old wiring takes over.
That's why it has to be conditioned. The book makes it clear this isn't something you just understand once. You have to practice it. The instructor in the car has to scream at the driver, "Look where you want to go, look at the track,"
Yeah.
for the first few skids.
And then it becomes automatic.
By the fourth or fifth time, the new neural pathway is built. The driver's head and eyes automatically snap to the goal, not the obstacle, and the car follows. That is a conditioned, instant state change.
So we have to practice these shifts in our physiology and our focus until they become our default response. That's the real work.
It is. And this naturally leads us to the ultimate tool for directing our focus.
The art of asking empowering questions.
Exactly. Because questions are the remote control for your focus. They are, hands down, the simplest and most powerful way to change how you feel and where you're headed in any given moment.
The whole insight here is that the quality of your life really depends on the quality of the questions you habitually ask yourself.
100%. If you ask a lousy negative question like, "Why does this always happen to me?" Your brain, which is this incredible supercomputer, will immediately go to work finding all the evidence to prove that question right.
It'll give you a whole list of reasons why bad things always happen to you.
And you'll stay stuck. But if you ask a better question, you get a better answer. And that's how questions change the resources available to you. The book has some incredible examples of this.
Let's talk about W. Mitchell. His story is just unbelievable.
It is. Here's a guy who was burned over most of his body in a motorcycle accident and then later was paralyzed from the waist down in a plane crash.
I mean, the default question for anyone in that situation would be, why me? Why is life so unfair?
And that question traps you in victimhood. But Mitchell, he asked a different question. He asked, how can I use this? And because of this, what will I now be able to contribute?
That's such a radical reframe.
It's a complete pivot. That one question shifted his focus from what he had lost to what he could give. It unlocked all these inner resources and allowed him to become this incredibly inspiring figure, all because he chose a better question.
And then there's the even more visceral example. The concentration camp escapee, Stanislavski Leach.
Yes. In that environment of just absolute horror, the normal questions are about survival, fear, impossibility. How can I get out? What if I get caught?
But he changed the question, too.
He changed the question. He stopped asking, how do I escape? And started asking, how can I use this situation to escape? A subtle but profound difference.
And his brain delivered an answer.
A brutal, unthinkable answer. Hide naked among the pile of dead bodies being taken out of the camp. He had to endure these horrific conditions, but because he asked a question that demanded a solution from within the problem, his brain found one, and he ran 25 miles to freedom. The power was in the question.
It really connects to what the book says about genius, that genius isn't about having all the answers.
No, it cites Einstein, who said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. His breakthroughs came from asking simple, persistent, better questions that nobody else was asking.
So let's drill down on the mechanics. The book says there are 3 specific ways questions work on us.
Right. Mechanism 1 is the most direct. Questions immediately change what we focus on and therefore how we feel.
So if I'm asking, why am I so depressed? My brain is on a mission to find proof of my depression.
Exactly. But if you force yourself to ask, how can I change my state right now so I feel happy and more resourceful? You're sending your brain on a completely different mission. You're compelling it to search for solutions.
It's like giving your brain a new set of search terms.
That's a perfect analogy. You're changing the data input, so the emotional output has to change.
Okay, what's mechanism 2?
Mechanism 2. Questions change the resources available to us. They shine a spotlight on things we might not have even noticed. The Ford Motor Company story is a great business example of this.
This is back in the 80s when they were in huge trouble, right?
Losing billions. And the CEO at the time, Donald Peterson, was known for asking questions. He was with his head designer, Jack Telnack, who was presenting the boring, boxy car designs of the era. And Peterson just stops him and asks this incredibly simple question.
What was it?
He just said, Jack, do you like the cars you're designing?
Wow, that cuts through everything, all the corporate speak, all the metrics.
Everything.
Yeah.
And it unlocked total honesty. Telnack admitted he didn't and that he wouldn't buy one himself. And that one question, that one moment of truth, forced the entire company to change direction. It led to radical new designs like the Taurus, and it saved the company.
All because of one simple, powerful question.
A question they had failed to ask for years. Which brings us to mechanism 3, which is maybe the most important one to be aware of.
And that is?
Mechanism 3. Questions contain presuppositions. This is the hidden danger. A presupposition is a belief or a premise that's embedded inside the question, and it programs us to accept it as a fact, even if it's not proven.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you make a mistake at work, and you immediately ask yourself, why do I always sabotage myself?
Okay.
The presupposition in that question is that you are a saboteur, that this is a fixed part of your identity. You've accepted it without question. So your brain stops looking for the situational reason for the mistake and starts looking for proof that you're a self-sabotaging person. It's a devastating loop.
And this can be used by others against us, too.
All the time, especially in media and politics. The book uses the example of Dan Quayle during his campaign. A reporter asked him a loaded question about using his family's influence to stay out of the Vietnam War.
So the presupposition was that he had used his family's influence.
Correct. And it was unproven. But by putting it in the question, people react as if it's a fact. They get upset about the presupposed guilt, not the actual facts of the matter. So we have to be vigilant about the questions we ask ourselves and the questions we allow others to ask us.
So we've got the levers, physiology, focus through submodalities, and questions to control that focus. The key then is bringing it all together, conditioning it.
It's all about synergy. You have to make asking empowering questions a habit, which then forces you to use more resourceful physiology and focus.
I actually tried this once, very deliberately after first reading the material. I was in a really frustrating business dispute, and my internal dialogue was just toxic. I was so angry at this person, and my brain was completely locked on. There was nothing respectable about this guy at all.
The classic disempowering state. Your brain is just finding reference after reference to support the anger.
Exactly. So I forced the pattern interrupt. I stopped and asked the question, what could I respect about him if I wanted to?
And that word could is so important, isn't it?
It's everything, because my initial reaction was nothing. But that word could forced my brain to go on a different search. It had to look for possibilities.
And did it find any?
It took a minute, but yeah, it came up with, well, at least he's taking action. It's the wrong action, but he's not just sitting there. He's trying to implement what I taught him, even if he's doing it badly.
And that changes everything.
It broke the pattern completely. I actually laughed. It shifted my state from anger to, analysis and strategy. I could see the situation clearly again. The question forced my brain out of that pit.
That's the conditioning in action. And to make it automatic, the book lays out a very specific daily routine.
The morning power questions.
Yes. This is about engineering your state for the day before the world has a chance to throw its own negativity at you.
So this is a ritual you do every single morning. And the key is you have to really feel the answers. You can't just think them.
You have to fully associate. So let's go through them. The first question is, what am I happy about in my life now?
And as you ask that, you need to find a real memory. Make the picture bright in your head. Feel that happiness in your body.
Exactly. Use your physiology and submodalities. The second question, what am I excited about in my life now?
Again, feel the excitement. Maybe your breathing quickens a little. You feel that energy.
Number 3, what am I proud about in my life now? This one is great for building self-esteem. Feel the pride. Stand a little taller.
Number 4, what am I grateful for in my life now? This is a huge one. Gratitude is neurologically one of the most powerful pattern interrupters for anger and fear.
It's almost impossible to feel anxious and grateful at the same time. And finally, number 5, who do I love and who loves me? This connects you to your most powerful resource.
And if your brain fights back on any of these, if it says nothing,
that's when you use your magic word.
Oh,
What could I be happy about if I wanted to be? It just lowers the barrier enough to get your brain to start searching. The goal is to find 2 or 3 real, felt answers for each question.
If you do this every day, you're not just hoping for a good day.
You're conditioning yourself for one. You're building that neural highway to resourceful states, so it becomes your new default.
So to wrap this up, we've really uncovered these 2 incredibly powerful levers for changing your life, really. First, altering your emotional state, instantly using your body and the way you represent things in your mind.
And second, consciously directing your focus and your resources by mastering the art of the empowering question. These are the tools of mastery, not just dabbling.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought from the source material. It kind of flips a common belief on its head.
It does. Most of us believe that first you have to establish confidence, you have to do the work, get the results, and then after all that, you get to feel confident.
Right. Confidence is the reward for the hard work.
That's the traditional path, but there is a faster path. And the guide suggests that for those who have mastered their state, the opposite is true. You first decide to feel confident. You generate that state of certainty within yourself, and that very state is what unlocks the focus, the drive, the creativity, all the resources you need to then go out and establish competence.
So confidence isn't the reward, it's the tool.
Confidence is a decision you make right now, driven by the questions you ask and the physiology you adopt. It's the ability to generate that certainty before the evidence is in. That's what truly drives human achievement.
That is a perfect place to end, a real pivot point to consider. We really encourage you to look at your own habitual questions and physical patterns after this. This is what these deep dives are all about, giving you the tools to make those conscious changes.
Absolutely. It's about moving from being an effect of your circumstances to being the cause of your results.
Well, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. We look forward to exploring more of these powerful concepts with you next time. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next video.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are ready to continue our exploration of the really critical principles presented in this work.
Picking up right where we left off.
Exactly. And today, our deep dive is focusing specifically on these powerful lessons from the 7 lessons from Awaken the Giant Within framework.
And we're getting into some of the most fundamental stuff here.
We really are. We're targeting the mechanisms that basically determine our life's direction. We're talking about our personal compass, our values, and what the Source calls the ultimate secret to lasting fulfillment, which is contribution. So for you, the listener, think of this as a shortcut. We're moving past the high-level theory and getting right into the psychological mechanics of decoding your own destiny.
It's about shifting the entire operating system of your life, not just tweaking a few apps.
That's a great way to put it.
And that operational shift is really what makes this material so compelling. The core idea, and we touched on this before, is that destiny and success, they're not products of luck or your circumstances.
Not your conditions.
Yeah. Not at all. They are purely the result of your decisions. It reminds me of that famous quote, "Man is not the creature of circumstances. Circumstances are the creatures of men."
I love that quote. It's so empowering.
It's incredibly liberating because it puts the control right back in your hands. It emphasizes this almost unlimited power that's just lying dormant inside you, waiting to be directed.
So the goal here isn't just small improvements.
No, not at all. It's not about overcoming one little fear. It's about what we'd call global change, completely altering the trajectory of your entire life by mastering the 3 key decisions we're making, every single moment.
And that very first decision, it really all starts with where we point our attention, doesn't it?
It has to.
I mean, a primary reason people fail to achieve what they say they want is that they just fail to direct their focus consistently. They don't have what the Source calls that laser focus.
They dabble. They major in minor things.
Exactly. Mistaking activity for productivity. Just think about the huge difference in momentum when you really focus your power, when you increase the sheer repetition of an activity in a really concentrated period.
Well, it's the difference between slow, plodding, incremental growth and true exponential growth.
Right.
The author's personal experience with this is, I think, the perfect example of this principle in action, how he accelerated his growth as a public speaker.
Oh, it's a fantastic story. At the time, most professional speakers were doing maybe 1 talk a week? Building experience very gradually.
A slow climb.
But he made a conscious decision to to compress time. Instead of speaking once a week, he booked himself to speak 3 times a day.
I mean, just think about that. 3 times a day.
To anyone who would listen. He wasn't waiting for the perfect audience. Small businesses, civic groups, you name it. And if you do the math on that, his peers were getting maybe 50 engagements of experience in a whole year.
And he was getting that in 2 or 3 weeks?
Exactly. So within 12 months, he had literally decades of practical experience and feedback crammed into 1 year.
And that is the raw power of massive action combined with intense focus. But, the material is also very wise to caution that action by itself isn't quite enough.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because success also requires 2 other vital components. First, patience for what they call the lag time, and second, a real flexibility to change your approach.
That lag time is the killer. I think that's where most people quit.
Absolutely. It's that gap between when you take the action, when the result finally shows up. People assume the action failed when really they just stopped digging, 3 feet from gold.
And the flexibility part is just as critical because the world is always shifting under our feet. We need examples that show not just brute force persistence, but real adaptability.
And for that, you can't find a better story than Soichiro Honda.
Oh, it's the ultimate illustration of that triad.
Yeah.
Massive action, patience through that lag time, just radical flexibility.
His career was, it was just a series of what should have been catastrophic, game-ending setbacks.
Let's walk through it. First, his main business idea, selling a unique piston design to Toyota. Rejected. Flat out.
Gone. Then World War II breaks out, and his factory gets bombed.
And just as he starts to rebuild, a massive earthquake comes and destroys what's left.
You couldn't write this stuff. And then after the war, Japan faces this crippling gasoline shortage. Any single one of those events would be a legitimate reason for a sensible person to just give up.
But his commitment didn't waver. He didn't quit. He just kept changing the meaning of the setbacks. When the gas shortage hit, he was desperate. He couldn't even drive his car to get food for his family.
So instead of seeing a national crisis, he saw a personal engineering problem.
Exactly. His solution, born of desperation, was to attach a tiny engine to his bicycle. And suddenly, that little invention becomes the seed of his next empire.
And then when he runs out of the small war surplus motors he was using, he sees the huge market need but has zero capital to build a factory.
And this is where the flexibility in action is just brilliant. Instead of giving up or going to a bank, he does something completely unheard of.
He wrote, 18,000 personal letters?
18,000 letters to every single bicycle shop owner in Japan. He explained how they could all help revitalize the nation through mobility by funding his new company.
He wasn't begging. He was offering a vision, a higher purpose.
He appealed to their values, and he got 5,000 positive replies. Enough capital to launch the Honda Motor Company. The rest is history. That perseverance wasn't just being stubborn.
No, it was about keeping his focus on the end goal while staying completely flexible about the means of getting there.
And that's such a vital transition.
Yeah.
Moving from that relentless action to the internal mechanics.
Right. Because the decision to pursue goals, no matter how flexible you are, it's still not enough to guarantee long-term happiness or fulfillment.
It's not the whole picture.
Not even close. True, sustained satisfaction requires understanding and, more importantly, living one's values. And what's fascinating here is how our foundational decisions, what we focus on, the meaning we give things, the actions we take, are all secretly filtered through these neuroassociations of pain and pleasure.
The backstage directors of our lives, as the source calls them. These unconscious pre-programmed calculations of, will this lead to pain or will this lead to pleasure?
And as you pointed out, most people get this equation completely backwards.
They really do.
They're masters of avoiding short-term pain, which is the very thing that guarantees long-term pain. We can sit and intellectualize all day about what we should do, but if our nervous system links overwhelming pain to the necessary steps,
You'll sabotage it.
every single time, subconsciously.
So give us an actionable mechanism here. Beyond just knowing that dynamic exists, how do we actually use it as leverage?
You have to consciously redirect the leverage. Let's use the weight loss example. It's a classic.
Yeah.
A person knows losing weight will lead to long-term pleasure, health, confidence, energy.
Of course.
But the brain links pain to the process, the hunger, the discipline, the saying no to dessert. To create change, you have to apply massive, immediate, overwhelming pain to the inaction.
So not to the diet, but to not dieting.
Precisely. For instance, if you don't stick to your diet today, you have to assign the pain of, I am actively shortening my lifespan, I am letting my family down, I'm modeling weakness for my children. You have to globalize the consequences.
Wow.
Once the pain of not acting becomes greater than the pain of acting, change is automatic. Your ultimate destiny is shaped by those three decisions: what to focus on, what things mean, and what to do, and they are all driven by that pain-pleasure switch.
Which is the perfect lead-in to why clarifying our values, the subject of Lesson 6, is the ultimate lever for change.
It's everything.
So this brings us right to it. Lesson 6, clarifying your deepest values. If massive action is the vehicle you're driving.
Then your values are the GPS and the fuel.
Exactly. They are the magnetic north of our internal compass. They control the direction and the ultimate destination of our lives. If you consistently act against your values, or if your values are all jumbled up and conflicting,
The result is inevitable.
frustration, disappointment, and that nagging, hollow feeling of unfulfillment, even if you've achieved a lot of material success.
So to manage this compass, we have to start by distinguishing between two fundamental types of values. We have the desired emotional states, which the source calls ends values, and then we have the things we pursue to get them, the means values.
This distinction is so critical, and I think it's where most people get confused. If you ask people about their values, they'll list off things like career, money, family.
The nouns, the things.
Right, and those are the means. They're vehicles. They're important, but they are not the destination. The destination is the emotional state those means are supposed to produce.
Yep.
If I'm chasing money, I'm probably really chasing the ends value of security or maybe freedom. If I'm all about family, I'm really seeking love or connection. The emotion, security, love, happiness, that's the real end game.
And if you confuse the two, you can spend your whole life chasing the wrong vehicle. If your true ends value is security, but you spend all your time chasing the means value of fame because you think fame will bring you security,
You're going to be miserable.
you'll probably fail to get true security and you'll experience immense frustration along the way. The emotional ends have to be the priority.
Which raises an important question. If we're all seeking these positive emotional states, do we seek them all equally? Do we value, say, joy the same way we value passion, or security the same as freedom?
Absolutely not. And this is where the hierarchy of values becomes the single most critical factor in your life's path. Every single one of us has an internal ranking system, a priority list for which emotional states we will do the most to achieve.
And this ranking dictates everything.
Every major life decision, and usually it's happening unconsciously.
Yeah.
We will always, always sacrifice a lower-ranked value to achieve a higher-ranked value.
And those different hierarchies create radically different lives. The source gives such a clear contrast here. Let's say you have person A who values, in order, freedom, passion, adventure, and power.
Okay. That hierarchy demands movement, risk, autonomy.
Now contrast that with person B, who prioritizes security, comfort, intimacy, and health.
Completely different operating system.
Totally different. Person A is naturally going to start their own business, travel the world solo, invest in high-risk, high-growth stuff. Person B is going to look for a stable, long-term job, take vacations to the same safe place every year, and prioritize quiet nights at home.
And neither one is right or wrong. The problem, the conflict, arises when person B secretly wants the passion and adventure of person A.
But they can't have it.
They're psychologically trapped by their number one value of security. The pursuit of security means they must avoid the very risk that's required for passion and adventure. It guarantees internal misery. You can't drive your life in two opposite directions at the same time.
And that disconnect is what leads to that crushing feeling of, I have all this, I should be happier than I am.
That's it, exactly. So the decision we all have to face isn't the passive question, what are my current values? It's the much harder, proactive question. What do my values need to be in order to consistently and automatically create the ultimate destiny I want?
That requires a conscious redesign. You're basically rewriting your internal code.
You are.
I found the author's own story about his value evolution to be so insightful because it really exposes the psychological resistance we have to this kind of change, especially for, high achievers.
The resistance he felt to changing them.
Yeah. He looked at his old moving toward values: passion, love, freedom, contribution, and achievement. And he realized that this mix created this explosive but really intense, demanding life.
A life of constant striving.
Constant striving. It was a form of self-imposed pain that he linked to his own achievement.
And he was afraid to let that go.
He was terrified. The material explains the fear he had when he thought about making a simple value like happiness the top priority. He literally worried that if he made happiness easy to achieve, if he ranked it above the struggle of achievement,
He'd lose his edge, his drive.
Exactly. That he'd get soft, he'd get complacent, and that he'd lose his ability to make a big impact. And I think that's a profound conflict that a lot of successful people deal with.
Oh, for sure. The belief that friction and struggle are required for growth. They fear that comfort leads to complacency.
But the source argues that prioritizing internal states like peace and happiness doesn't get rid of your drive. It just makes the drive sustainable and, enjoyable.
It changes the fuel source from desperation to inspiration.
That's it. And the result of his conscious value shift was immediate and systemic. He elevated values like health and vitality, love and warmth, cheerfulness. He put them way up high, with fun and happiness way ahead of achievement.
And what happened?
He felt immediate physical and emotional changes. The constant tension just eased. He realized that by prioritizing his health and cheerfulness, he actually achieved more freedom and intimacy, because he wasn't constantly striving and sacrificing his well-being just to prove his worth.
The drive was still there.
The drive was still there, but it became a joyful expression, not some desperate compulsion.
which proves that managing your internal state is the highest form of performance enhancement. When you have that clarity and congruency in your values, your decisions become almost effortless.
Okay, so we focused a lot on the values we move toward, but we also have an equally powerful hierarchy on the other side.
The emotional states we move away from.
The ones we try to avoid at all costs. Things like rejection, depression, humiliation, inadequacy.
And we have to give these moving away values the same level of scrutiny because, as we've said, people will often do far more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. If you place avoiding humiliation as your #1 emotional priority, that can become a crippling life directive.
Give us a concrete example of how that can be so crippling.
Okay, imagine a talented executive. Their highest moving away value is avoiding public humiliation. They get asked to give the keynote presentation at a huge industry conference, a massive career opportunity.
Right, a huge step up.
But unconsciously, their brain starts running the calculation. The risk is, if I perform poorly, I will experience the intense pain of public humiliation. Since that value is ranked #1, the brain will create a powerful protective strategy.
So we'll try to get them out of it.
It will do anything.
Yeah.
This could look like procrastination, a sudden illness, or even outright self-sabotage, anything to prevent them from taking that risk and exposing themselves to the possibility of that overwhelming top-ranked bane.
Okay, that makes it crystal clear. So they will trade a huge long-term gain for the short-term certainty of just avoiding that fear.
That's the trade-off, every time. And what's fascinating here is that consciously defining these moving away values and then consciously deciding to lower their ranking or reduce their emotional weight is absolutely crucial.
You have to decide which fears you're no longer willing to let run your life.
Yes. If you realize that avoiding humiliation is ruling you, you have to actively start linking pain to the avoidance of risk and pleasure to the taking of smart risks. It's the only way to make sure your fear hierarchy doesn't unknowingly sabotage your entire future.
So once we have our values clarified, once we have a congruent hierarchy for both moving toward and moving away states, we're ready for what feels like the ultimate piece of the puzzle. Lesson 7, the importance of contribution. The source material really suggests that contribution might be the highest human goal, that it offers this profound sense of fulfillment that money or fame or even personal achievement alone can never really deliver.
This is where we transcend the self. Contribution is the essential antidote to stagnation and the fear of meaninglessness. Just look at the psychology of success. You hit a major goal, a financial target, a promotion, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's an immediate emotional void unless a new, compelling set of goals is already in place. If we stop expanding, if we stop giving back, we risk this emotional and spiritual death long before we physically age.
It forces you to focus outside yourself.
It does, and that provides that vital sense of purpose, connection, and pride that comes from knowing your life has genuinely mattered to someone else.
It's the constant, never-ending commitment to growth, but applied externally, not just internally. And the source argues that this taps into something that's already inside all of us, an inborn capacity to be heroic.
And that capacity isn't for, superheroes in movies. It's activated by surmounting difficulty through a single decisive moment of commitment.
The anecdote about Mother Teresa's defining moment, it just captures this transformation so perfectly.
It really does. She was a comfortable teacher doing her duties, but her entire life changed in an instant when she was confronted with profound suffering.
Tell us about that immediate decision she made.
She saw a woman lying abandoned on the streets of Calcutta, dying all alone. And her decision was immediate, it was profound, and it was absolute. She committed right then and there. She would take this dying woman home, make sure she died with dignity, and from that moment on, she would dedicate her life to easing the pain of the suffering and the rejected.
Her commitment wasn't about solving some huge global issue at first.
Not at all. It was about solving one person's pain and then persisting in that mission until she found a way to scale it up.
So heroes, then, are really just ordinary people who make a commitment to making a difference, start by doing the little things extraordinarily well, and then just persist with total congruency until they find a way.
It's a choice of focus and action, not a personality trait you're born with.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more then. If the rewards of contribution are so huge, why isn't it a universal priority for everyone?
That's the question, isn't it?
The material points to this really pervasive false belief. The idea that society's problems are just too big, too ingrained, too permanent, and that one individual can't possibly make a meaningful difference.
It creates what we call learned helplessness.
And we have to actively fight that belief.
We have to, because it's fundamentally false. I mean, look at history. All the great reform movements, all the major shifts in society were carried out by committed individuals who just refused to accept the status quo.
So we have to change the belief that the individual is insignificant.
And you do that by focusing on what the source calls the processional effects of our daily choices.
The material gives some striking, almost counterintuitive examples of how our individual consumption choices set these massive ripple effects in motion, especially with resources and the environment.
Oh, the statistics on the environmental cost of the typical Western diet are just stunning.
They really are.
The material points out that 1 acre of land can feed 20 times more people if the focus is on a vegetarian diet compared to a meat-based diet. More energy is consumed by the U.S. beef industry than any other single industry in the country.
So the decision you make in the grocery store about what to put on your plate, which feels like such a small, personal choice,
Sets profound processional effects in motion. It affects water use, land use, global energy consumption, famine relief around the world.
that completely reframes the whole concept. Contribution isn't just about writing a check or volunteering for an afternoon. It's about making conscious daily decisions that align with a global value system.
And then think about the potential leverage we have just by giving our time and energy.
The collective power.
Imagine it.
Yeah.
The source material calculates that if every American contributed just 5 hours a week, the nation would benefit from 500 million hours of manpower dedicated to causes.
500 million hours a week.
That is an almost incalculable resource just waiting to be tapped, and it's accessed simply by individuals deciding to commit that time.
The monetary value would be in the trillions, but the emotional and spiritual value is even higher. And contribution doesn't have to be some grand gesture.
No, it's about simple, consistent giving. The examples are everywhere.
Yeah.
Mentoring a child, tutoring literacy, really engaging in local recycling, visiting the aged.
The Anthony Robbins Foundation's Commit To initiative is a perfect example of the depth of this.
Right, because it's not just drop-in charity. It requires a monthly commitment to visit an assigned individual, a prisoner, an elderly person, a homeless child, with the specific goal of just being a consistent friend.
Creating a real long-term human connection.
Exactly.
Now that takes commitment. And I can hear the listener's immediate resistance now. I barely have time for my own life. How can I commit to 5 hours a week of contribution without completely burning out?
And that's a crucial, valid concern. The source addresses it by stressing the need for balance, not perfection, when you're contributing.
You can't wait until your life is perfect.
You'll wait forever. You can't wait until all your own problems are solved before you help others. Contribution should be integrated into your life, not added on as another stressful burden. And beyond that, we have to recognize the two-way street that's inherent in contribution.
Meaning, we get as much as we give.
Often we get more. When we think we are there to teach or to serve or to give, we are often really there to learn. These experiences, they expand our frame of reference. They force us out of our own self-absorption. They expand our sense of compassion, our gratitude, our sense of what's possible, far more than they expand the life of the person we think we're helping.
It brings the ultimate fulfillment.
Because it satisfies the deepest human need to matter and to connect.
So what does this all mean for your destiny? At the end of the day, it means your future isn't some random fate. It is shaped by two powerful conscious acts that we've really explored today.
Two very specific acts.
First, clarifying the emotional values, the ends values that guide your life, and making sure their hierarchy is actually congruent with the destiny you want. And second, committing to unselfish contribution as the ultimate path to lasting fulfillment.
By managing your values, you gain certainty, emotional consistency, and congruency in everything you do. You stop sabotaging yourself.
And by committing to contribution.
You gain that ultimate fulfillment that goes beyond material success because you connect your personal life to a universal purpose. We are, spiritual beings having a human experience. And remembering that just puts everything into perspective.
It really does.
We firmly believe that what's most important is not how long we live, but how we live.
I couldn't agree more. I'd much rather wear out from joyful, focused action than rust out from inaction and fear. Let's make sure the end of our life finds us climbing a new mountain, always growing, always giving. So our challenge to you now is to actively take the time to define your own personal rules for happiness based not on the values you inherited, but on the values you consciously choose to create your ultimate destiny.
Make that decision now.
We really appreciate you tuning in for this deep dive into these transformative ideas of values and contribution. If this analysis of the core lessons from Awaken the Giant Within helps you maybe find your next compelling goal or shift your perspective, please share this deep dive with others.
Subscribe for future insights.
And we look forward to exploring the next critical topic with you very soon.